Welcome to the HSP and Neurodivergent podcast. I'm Julie Bjelland, and I'm here with.
Willow McIntosh, great to be here.
Good to see you, Willow, and thanks for everybody joining us. We're recording live in the sensitive empowerment community, my favorite place to be, and we love having you guys live with us. So, Willow, tell me what's been going on with you. Let's catch me up. What are some of your wins or challenges you may have experienced? I've got some to share myself.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Very good to be here. Thank you everyone for joining us. So it's wonderful to have you with us live, very much so. What's happening this week? So there's been some really interesting pieces happening for me around my value, which I'll talk into in just a second. I think some of my highlights were reconnecting with nature again this week. I haven't been focusing on that so much recently, and this area where I'm in right now is one of the most forested parts of Montenegro, and it's called Montenegro. It's one of the most forested parts of Europe, and the forests are amazing. I was able to walk out into. It was actually like a 45-degree angle, so it was quite complicated to traverse it. But I was just so intrigued to get deeper and deeper into this forest. Oh my goodness! And I was able to kind of get up quite high and then sit on some rocks and just immerse myself in the trees. And wow, just the stillness! It was just palpable to sit there and feel this ecosystem of life and just how deeply I felt connected to that. It was so invigorating. I wanted to just go 6 hours deeper into it. But
wow, I love that feeling when you're around trees. I've been thinking about like after my next move, I want to live amongst the trees.
Yes, living amongst the trees. I totally get that. Yeah, I have a real kind of fantasy about tree houses and living in amongst trees. Do you have that too?
Oh, that would be so neat. Oh my gosh, there's so many neat things. I just have this vision of just having some land and so many trees, and like I'm even thinking about like one of those container houses that they've designed where the whole side opens up, and then so it's like it's indoor outdoor living, and it's like got a deck, and then there's just surrounded by trees. And I think that's kind of my vision.
Amazing. Yeah, because it'd be really easy to get the planning for that probably as well, which means you could put it anywhere, I expect.
It's a lot in California. That's one issue, is that like it is hard to actually get permitting for things.
Oh, okay.
Stop me in the past. I have to have a lot of it's going to be some effort to get what I want.
Okay. Understood. I love the sound of it though. Yes, I totally see that. And what an amazing lifestyle for the animals, and also, the retreats you can run. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That would be such a neat thing to have, something like that, to bring retreats, bring sensitive neurodivergent people together in person. That'd be pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a real dream to do something similar. It'd be interesting actually to know how many people listening would like to come to those kind of retreats if we were to host and run that kind of thing. I would love to do that. There's nothing more powerful than when we all get together, especially in nature. I think it was amazing opportunity. And so some of my challenges this week as well, I've really been tuning into what value means for me, and my value. And I was walking again today, and actually Sequoia came with me. She followed me up the house and came with me on the walk, which was amazing. Like trusting behind me. It was so cute. Yeah, she wanted to come and explore. When I get a bit too far, she meows. She's like, "Look, we're outside of our territory, man." I'm like, what are you doing? So then we come back.
Cute.
Yeah, it's very
One thing I think about, if I had some land, one of my cats would totally love doing that, following me around like that. The one that does kayaking with me.
Yes, yeah. Yes, I think she would love that. I wonder if she would even actually go on the kayak with you. I'm sure she probably. She does already. Is that right? Your dog does.
She goes on the kayak with me.
She does. Oh my goodness.
We got people in saying, put
Wow.
me on the list for the retreat. We need to start a list. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So you do kind of watch the fish and kind of look out for
Yes,
stuff in the water.
such an amazing experience because the usually by the time the sun comes out, there's like ripples in the water, so you can't really see all the way down. But for some reason, yesterday was like this magical moment where I realized that the water was still really still and there was a lot of sun. So you could actually see all the way down to the bottom. So I took her out. I mean, really that just involves me I put her little vest on, her swim vest.
Oh,
And then she follows me out. She follows me to the kayak, jumps on. She loves it. Like she'll meow if I leave without her. And
oh,
and we were both like looking down because you could see the fish and you could see stingrays. It was pretty cool.
wow. That's amazing. I wonder how she perceives that kind of lower realm or, like perception. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I went up into a little bit into the forest today with Sequoia was coming with me, and I was thinking like, because she's from Greece, we haven't really been in proper forest before. And so I just went a little bit like sort of 12 feet in and just kind of sat down. And we got kind of a bit deeper in and I just saw this sort of terror come over her face where she was just looking around going like, how do we know there aren't monsters in there? Like, because it's just like looking in and listening, going, should we be in here? Like, are there bears? Yeah, so we came out. It was very cute. It was very cute. But yeah, the piece around value I thought was really interesting, and I know there's a piece that we're looking to go into today, and I was just thinking about the journey of kind of figuring out my area of expertise and the work that I've done over the years, and how long, well, not necessarily how long, but how important it is, I think, for us as HSPs to get in the area that we really love and kind of experience ourselves in our value, not necessarily in the area that we're meant to work in necessarily, but I think because we are challenged a lot by feeling different when we're growing up and we get, the wrong messages, sometimes we can misunderstand what our value is and try to be like others and try to find our value in the same way others do. And I was just thinking about my own journey of really coming through that and taking ownership of that. And I think, it's just such an important piece for us to practice being seen for what we love and being seen in our value. And it's certainly been probably one of the most challenging things that I've had to overcome. And it's like a constant evolution, there's more experience of the value and kind of, wow, okay, this is really me. And oh my gosh, I love doing this. And the more it kind of grows and the more we sort of allow that to evolve, I think.
Yeah, there's not really like a roadmap necessarily because you have like these special gifts and you're discovering how you can support people with these gifts. So you're kind of creating your own roadmap and evolving as you go, which is I think a lot of us end up doing, right? In our work.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. Actually, as HSPs, there isn't necessarily a roadmap. A society doesn't have a roadmap for us necessarily as it does for everyone else. And really, we do have to figure that out and trust our intuition to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I had like these really opposite experiences this week, which kind of made me think it'd be such an interesting thing to talk about because I had this experience of feeling really misunderstood. And then I also had this experience of feeling like a really strong sense of belonging, like in two different experiences. And I was like, wow, this would be an interesting thing to talk about because, how many of us listening have felt misunderstood? So many of us have felt that. And I was already I've been doing a lot of like thinking around, as we've been talking about before, about grief and things like that too. And this whole idea of companionship with grief, that there isn't this sense of that you reach a point where you're done, but it's more about this evolving acceptance of this is a part of my experience and it's connecting me to some really deep parts of myself. And so I've as we talked about before, about that kind of like stacking of challenges. So my mom's husband called and said that her ashes, he had received her ashes. So she had actually donated her body to science, which I think is such an amazing thing that she did that was her wish. And then that kind of hit me hard, the idea of her ashes. That just hit me hard, that experience. And also, so stacked on top of that, so I was already feeling kind of tender. And I've had this relative who I've had some challenges around, and some boundaries around in terms of, you know, when you have somebody in your life that where you feel really misunderstood by, it can be such a painful thing. And especially if it's like a relative that you sort of have to have in your life in certain ways. So it's like we hadn't communicated very much for 6 months or longer. And they reached out and wanted to have like a healing conversation. And I thought, well, maybe it's time that we start doing that. And we met. But in the process of that, it just became clear to me that I was not going to be understood by this person. There was going to be a continual misunderstanding. So that in the sense that it made me just feel really bad, you know, I just felt kind of icky and I felt bad. And I thought, this is not healthy. This is not a healthy experience for me. And I think that so many times as sensitive people and as neurodivergent people, that we have that experience where we feel really misunderstood, but we sort of like force ourselves into these relationships with people in our families or people around us. But I'm hoping that by talking about this today, it really helps people understand that it is okay to, and sometimes necessary, to set boundaries around how much you give to someone, because there is, like, we can try to be understood. We can do the things that we can on our end to be understood, but there becomes a point at which we might get clear that we're not going to be understood. And that is going to be a continual experience. And it actually became harmful for me, especially my tenderness at this stage of life where I'm at right now at this season of life. So that was really painful to experience. But I also had this experience just a couple days after that, just a few days after that, where we had our first meeting, like group in the Autistic Women's Group, where we all met via video. And wow, it was so beautiful, Willow. Like, talk about a sense of belonging. Like, I even felt that. It was just the sense of like we were all late discovered autistic women, and that in itself instantly bonds us, you know, because it's a completely unique experience to us. And it was really bonding. It made me realize, like, I think it's going to be very healthy to spend time together. So I'm actually going to kind of planning on doing something where we're going to have like the same people meet for 6 weeks, like every week for 6 weeks. I just think it'd be so bonding. It's so healing for all of us to have that time together. So I was thinking about that difference of the sense of the feeling of being misunderstood in the world and the feeling of this sense of being understood and a sense of belonging, and like how we need to actually seek that out. We need to seek that out and have that in our life more, and have boundaries around areas where we don't feel that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're touching on something very important here. You know, I think, especially for us as HSPs, you know, because we're having such an in-depth experience, and what we value in our hearts is so important to us. And if we're trying to communicate that, and we're trying to communicate the importance of that, when that need isn't met, or when that awareness isn't met, then there's often that sense that the world is, you know, is there something wrong with me here, or should I adjust to try to fit into the other person's perspective, and therefore diminish my needs and diminish what's actually really important to me. And I think, you know, it's something that we have to be really aware of as HSPs. You know, I mean, obviously, you know, you're extremely aware of your own needs and your feelings, and how difficult it is when there's a family member, especially, that we can't necessarily, you know, communicate that with. but I think it's an opportunity for us to recognize just how important our own needs are and our values are, and how that is connected with our identity. And if someone else doesn't get it, then it doesn't necessarily mean we have to insist that they do, or it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with us if they don't, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, in my own journey of understanding autism and my neurodivergence, that I've become aware that I really cannot mask anymore. I cannot try to be somebody that I'm not. And I need to be around people who accept me as I am. And so I can't have these kinds of like, this particular person is looking for a relationship that's much more surface level, that wants to kind of put everything under the rug, the wounding stuff under the rug. And I'm not able to do that. Like, I can't be at a surface level. It's not who I am. If I engage in those kinds of circumstances, I just feel icky. It just does not feel right. And so kind of reaching a point where I realize, like, I really want to be intentional about that, but that sense of self-acceptance is, I've gone deep into that space now of self-acceptance. So it is something that I need to feel that sense of acceptance by others. And if I'm not feeling that, I need to have boundaries around that for my own well-being. And that's just a part of the experience. So it's such an interesting thing, it's a dynamic when it's going to be somebody that you might have to spend time with in the future because they're related. But it's been a beautiful experience, though, like reaching a level of self-acceptance in myself that really lets me walk around in the world as my real true self. And I can't be something different, I can't do those surface relationships. And it's just a powerful experience. I would love to hear from others, like whether you're live with us now. I'd love to hear some of your experiences with feeling misunderstood. And do you feel like, do you have those experiences, and what has that been like versus it being in spaces where you feel supported and you feel accepted and you feel a sense of belonging? And I think that is why communities like our community is so important, because we've had a lot of people talk about that, where they'll join and then they're like, wow, I just met these people and I already feel connected. Like, that's kind of a strange feeling. I'm not used to feeling that, I just think that's a beautiful thing. So I feel that way about this community too. And that it's such a healthy space to be with other people that understand you.
Absolutely. And this is why I don't go to hairdressers anymore, for exactly this reason. But no, I'm joking aside. It is. I think it's actually a sign of the relationship that we're having with our authenticity and our truth, is that we're so at home in who we know that we are, and we the level of communication that we have and how we share and show up is a very important part of who we are. And we have to have that, lower level kind of interaction, where often there is a lot that's being hidden under the surface. It is really hard, especially when you're stuck and you can't get out of the hairdressing chair, or if you're I think it's a sign of our growth and ownership, really, that we have a kind of a boundary in terms of the type of communication that we have, because ultimately things have got to be real for us.
That's kind of who we are. I've seen that we don't really exist in surface level places. We'd rather have, one or two people that we feel connected to in a deeper way than have a whole bunch of people in our life in a surface way. Barbara actually wrote, it isn't worth it to be around people who don't get me. Yes, that's right, Barbara.
Yeah, because there's that saying that even among I've said it before, but even among fools, a wise man looks stupid. So it's not to say that, I'm not saying by any means that non-HSPs are stupid in any way. We have to have the balance of the two in the world. But what can happen is if we're among others and we're unable to, we're unable to express our truth and be ourselves, then that can make us look silly, or there's something wrong with us. But it's just because we're in the wrong environment. We're not among the right people who understand us.
Yes, thinking about the environments we're in, absolutely. Becca says we can be secure in knowing that we all have special qualities and expertise. I'm learning to align with the experiences that are supportive of my gifts. Yes, that's so good,
Beautiful.
Becca. So true. And Willow, something you were saying, it has to do a lot with that relationship with self. That's something I think we could go into more, because that's a really powerful, that kind of hit me when you said that, because that is, that relationship with ourself, how we treat ourself, how we honor ourself and our needs, who we are. And I think, we were talking before we started recording about that sense of, like, in general, sensitive and neurodivergent people are pretty giving. We're really giving. We're loving. We're kind-hearted. It's so easy for us to, like, give to others and often not giving back to ourselves. And I think it's kind of this process of making sure we're including ourselves in that honoring of kindness, right? And that's such a powerful piece of it, because when we do, and I've been able to evolve into that too, because if this same situation had happened to me many years ago, there's probably a big part of me that would shove stuff under the rug, spend time with this person, and then just feel like I'm draining my energy and kind of feeling like it's just really unhealthy for me. I could imagine that I would do something like that before I really have this sense of honoring myself, of understanding myself. Understanding myself has been such a huge piece of this process, because the more we really understand ourselves, the more we can honor our needs, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's it's a clear indication of the level of development and awareness that you have, because it's the same for me. Like a few years back, I probably would have engaged in the conversation, thought, oh, maybe I should just go along with this and go out, and keep seeing this person or whatever it may be. But I think what happens is, over time, as we do honor the truth of ourselves, the truth of our needs, truth of our values, truth of our identity, what happens is, when we suddenly get into an environment where we are that's not supportive for us, we can really feel the difference. We can feel that the draining of the energy. We can feel our frequency lowering, and I think immediately we think, whoa, this, I'm not supposed to be here, and therefore we have, and with that, I think, comes the gentle phrasing that we can use to say, sorry, I have to go now, or something better than that, But we learn the phrasing of saying, a great conversation, whatever it may be. But I think we start to we start to value ourselves and value our needs, rather than suffering and losing energy and lowering frequency.
Good stuff. I have some things I wrote some notes about that I want to go into, that you said. I loved it. And I want to mention too what Caroline says. She says, before learning I was an HSP, I used to assume that I deserved the negativity coming from others. But now I realize that that's falsehood. I think so many of us have felt that, because we received messages about that. Ian says, my self relationship was a people pleaser mode. Yep. For so long, just because I grew up like that. When I tried to fit in as a kid, it always went sideways. Oh, yes. So many of us have been people pleasers. Wow. Yeah. And in that process of people pleasing, we completely lose our own identity. We lose our own sense of self. We don't take up space in the world. Oh, that, I think I would say that most of us have felt that way. Definitely. 100% agree. Yep. Right. That is something that, did you used to be a people pleaser too, Willow?
Oh, just chronic, out of control. Just coming away from social situations with no sense of self, utterly exhausted.
And it feels horrible afterwards, right? You just feel so icky and yeah. Miriam says, there's a tug of war between not wanting to feel rejected and wanting to be myself. Oh my goodness. That's very big.
There's a book there that needs to be written.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, a lot of neurodivergent people too, we have rejection sensitivity. And so it's very heightened for us to experience the sense of feeling rejected, so much so that we end up giving up ourselves and our needs in order to avoid feeling rejected. That is such a huge piece of it. And I found this is something to work on so much, is that self-compassion practice where we can, like me even nurturing, it doesn't necessarily get easier to feel rejected or misunderstood either. I think that's I'm able to move through it much faster now, but it still feels painful. And I just wanted to like kind of normalize that. Willie, you had said some stuff. You use the words like the truth of our needs and the truth of our identity and the lowering of frequency if we're not really honoring that. I think that's really powerful. You want to say more about that?
yeah, I think, I mean, if I go to the two contrasts of that, in the older versions of myself where I would be people pleasing and just giving anything in order to get that acceptance and and to keep people happy outside of me at the cost of myself, then what's actually happening in that process, and the reason I used to come away feeling so drained and so so powerless and so out of touch with myself, was because I am essentially giving out my own empowerment, my own energy. There's no boundaries there. And I can't maintain frequency in that experience. I'm not in access with the truth of my identity, the truth of my needs and my values. I'm not acknowledging any of that. And so all of that is just by the wayside. And therefore, I can't maintain frequency. I can't maintain truth in my expression. All of that is, it is not accessible.
Yeah. Yeah, we lose our identity. Like when I was picturing that about being such strong people pleasers, and I think all of us can relate to that, is the empty. I instantly got the word empty to come into my head, like
Yeah.
this sense of being empty, because we are like that. If we are totally people pleasing, we've really given up our needs, given up our identity, given up our sense of self, and we are empty. And when we do that for our lifetime, that is a very lonely, disconnected place to be. And it damages relationships too, because we aren't even showing up. We are just empty. We're invisible. And wow, didn't that hit you in a certain way, thinking of it like that?
Yeah. Yeah. It really does. It really does. Yeah. It's, and I think the journey out of that is actually, it's not as scary as we think it is, because much of the fears that are around, if I'm myself, what's going to happen? Am I going to be rejected? What's going to happen if I'm seen? And I think a lot of that comes from our upbringing, where it was really risky for us to be seen, and it was safer for us to be hidden. And I think as adults, we carry that same fear that if I start to be seen, and what happens if I do speak up and I do upset someone, or through being myself someone feels a little bit left out, or whatever it may be. And I think we're worried about that because of what happened in our childhood, but also I think as HSPs we're so deeply caring, and we really want people to feel happy and great around us. But in many ways, we're not actually going about that in the right way. We can't do that at the cost of ourselves.
Yes.
We have to do that from the strength of ourselves.
I love that. Can't do that at the cost of ourselves. We have to do that at the strength of ourselves. Absolutely. 100% agree with that. That is such a huge piece of it, isn't it? I mean, no wonder we have such high levels of depression in this community, because if we are giving up ourselves, we have at a cost to ourselves. It's so powerful. Monique was agreeing with that lonely, disconnected and empty feeling. That's so true.
Yeah, and Becca's saying boundaries create strength.
Oh, good. Yes, Becca, I love that. Boundaries absolutely create strength. and they improve
Yeah.
relationships. We somehow got these messages that they would damage relationships. It's like the opposite of that. It really improves relationships. Finding the balance between being deeply caring for myself and for those I care about. Monique, yeah, absolutely. By making sure that we're not giving things, that's an interesting, I keep going back to that, the cost. That's how it was in my experience with this relative. If I would continue in that, it would be at a cost to myself. And I felt that. I really felt that. And oh, that's so powerful.
Yeah, and that I don't believe serves the other person.
No.
Because there isn't a natural exchange, a natural loving exchange. If one of us is kind of diminishing ourselves in order to make the other person feel better, or to make them feel happy or whatever it is, then that imbalance isn't serving anybody. And there might be some initial, friction where we are being ourselves and we're coming from our strength, and that might feel a little bit weird to the other person. But it's often that other person then realizes, actually, hang on a minute, am I being real right now? Or is there something that we really need to talk about here? And maybe through the vulnerability in that other person, and then suddenly they think, or they realize, wow, actually, I can be seen and I can be real right now. And then we can have a proper, engaged conversation. So rather than us kind of giving that up, thinking, oh, I don't want to confront this person or challenge them, I'm just going to make myself small and at the cost of me. I think by sometimes standing and just holding with love and holding our truth, then actually we encourage the other person to do the same, and then we can connect.
Yes, absolutely. That because we can't really truly connect if we're giving ourselves up. They're not going to connect that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to say all of that. Sometimes it's not easy. It's easy to do that, and sometimes sometimes the person that we're communicating with is not ready to do that. And I think that's when we have to follow our intuition, and we can sense that the other person is not ready that and may never be ready to do that.
Yeah,
And it's not our place to force them or train them or coach them to do that. If that's where they're at, then we bless them, and that's fair enough.
Yeah, send them off with love. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
sometimes they're not capable of doing that too. It's like we can hope that they're capable, but how many times do we give a chance to someone when they aren't capable of meeting us where we need to be met? Linda said, I certainly felt a lot of shoulds of how one is to act at my mother's funeral. I sobbed while my siblings were very reserved, and also how now I should be over my grief for her. It's very isolating. Linda, I feel for you. I've been thinking that in anybody that's listening, if they'd be interested in having like a group meeting about mother loss in our community, I've been thinking about doing that. Excuse me. Because I think our experiences are very profound, even heightened. And I want to talk more about that, like that sense of there isn't a point of like we reach of like getting over it. It's really about learning to live with it. I've kind of been learning that myself, that I think initially when I was going through this process of grief, I was sort of like, okay, I'm going to go through it. And then there's going to be this point that I'm just kind of like past it. But I've really been learning a lot more about mother grief, especially that it is something that one of the most profound experiences that we can go through, profoundly difficult experiences, and the sense of there isn't a timeline to it. And in fact, we need to actually create space around it to spend time with the grief, because if we bury the grief, that's when we see people, 40 years later, even that feel the same that they did when it first happened, because it's been buried. And grief we need to create space for it, just like all of our emotions. We have to create space for the emotions that we have, and space in a loving, accepting, honoring way. And that has changed my relationship with my grief by doing that, by really deeply learning about this process of creating space for it. And there is no timeline or no shoulds and shouldn'ts. It is something that affects us all in different ways, but to honor our own process is to create that space around accepting and honoring what we feel for real, right? What we feel for real, even if it's like there is no right or wrong, and there's no time limit and timeline. It becomes a part of our experience.
Yeah, goodness me. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, and I think that is the key. You're absolutely right. Creating the space around it. You can kind of literally feel that happening, can't you? The way in like a container of acceptance. And I think, also how deeply we grieve is also indicating how deeply we care.
Yes.
And and I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think, honoring that in us and holding the space for that is really important. And the more, as you say, that we can learn to accept and give space to our emotions, the more I think, we can come to that realization that we're always going to be in challenge in life. And the more that we learn to honor our feelings and hold space for ourselves, the easier that we can be in relationship with challenge and difficulty, rather than judging ourselves that, I keep reacting so strongly as an HSP when something goes wrong, or if I upset someone, we can process it for 4 days. I think that if we're aware that we are going to always be in challenge, but the more that we can, obviously life's great too, the more we can kind of, the more we can kind of train ourselves to, or yeah, it's a beautiful balance of the two, right? The more then we can kind of like just learn to hold the space for ourselves in difficult feeling and challenge, I think,
Yeah, holding space.
rather than judging it.
Yes, holding a loving space for all emotions. It's
Yeah,
interesting how much we've been taught about like you're not supposed to show that emotion, or you're supposed to get over that emotion, whatever it is, whatever emotion we're talking about. And it's like why we have so many shoulds about emotions. The shoulds or shouldn'ts are always a problem. Whenever we hear ourselves saying should or shouldn't, always make sure you're pausing and identifying, because that's really coming from a place of judgment or judgments that we've received from others. And it's been a fascinating process, like dropping, having this happen to me. I've dropped into a dark place so many times during this process, but it's also taught me that I can climb out of that dark space over and over and over again. One day I just said to myself, I'm so proud of myself. I just said that like a few days ago because I was like, I dropped into this dark space, and I used to feel like, oh, I'm going to be there forever. I'm never going to get out of it. This is how my life is going to look from now on. I don't know if I can do it. And this time I was like aware, okay, this is my current state. I'm just going to keep going. And I had this like experience, Willow, where I'm like, I mean, when I have days that are just really hard days, now I really come to terms with like taking care of myself in a gentle way, just like I would with people I love. So I remove expectations from myself. I do the things that are very soothing, and I make sure I eat one really good meal a day. So like it has to be a night. I really love like a nice hot meal. And so that I was having just a really hard day. And I was like, okay, my only goal today is to take care of my pets and make myself a nice hot meal. And
yeah,
in the process, I was making this hot meal because I know like I feel so much better when I've had a nice hot meal. And so I just did it even if I didn't feel like doing it, but I knew it would make me feel better. And then I cut open this papaya that I got that was like so delicious.
wow,
It's a certain kind of papaya I like, and it's actually hard. Not a lot of places have it, but I had been to a certain store that did, and it was just perfect and delicious. And I felt myself when I ate this papaya that I was like, oh, I'm really enjoying this right now. Okay, like I can feel joy. Oh, that's right. I can feel good things. Okay, yeah, that's a good reminder. I can actually feel good things. And I just felt myself pulling out of that dark space. Isn't that funny?
amazing, amazing, wow. Yes, what a wonderful way to shift state. I think that is that's such a great skill to learn, and to be aware of what's needed. It's okay, I'm just gonna give myself space, as you say, look after the pets, have a great meal. It's amazing how that can, yeah, just change our mood rather than kind of fighting and rejecting and pushing and it's how we treat someone else, wouldn't it? If a friend came around and said, I'm feeling horrendous, we wouldn't say, well, can you sit down and do all of my emails, please, because you're looking a bit lazy right now, and we wouldn't do that. We'd say, hey, sit down and let me make you a meal. Why don't
Yeah.
you just have the cat on your lap for an hour or two?
Oh, yeah. I love it when people cook for me. That's like, that is such a great that's such great care. I love that feeling. I even don't like ordering food because it's like by the time it reaches home, it is not hot anymore. It feels like it's left over. So I've gotten into I get those, but I have a trouble with I think part of my challenge with some executive function stuff is like planning. Like I'm not planning meals. I find that really challenging. So I use like a system, a delivery where you get to pick the meals that you want for that week, and then they send you all the ingredients and the recipe for it. So it's like no matter how difficult of a day I'm having, I'm like, I know the ingredients are in the fridge, and here is the recipe telling me how to make this meal right now, and I just can do it like even in a zombie state. And by the time I'm done, and by the time I've eaten that meal, I feel better. And so anybody that's like struggles in those areas, sometimes doing something like that is really helpful because and also, because it's some people think that that's more expensive, but in some ways you aren't having waste. So like you don't have to buy big bunches of stuff. It gives you just the exact amount that you need. And it's really worked very well for me and I consider that a self-care. It's total self-care to do that because I don't have to worry about what am I cooking and do I have the ingredients and all of it.
That's a really good idea. What a great service. I really love that. Yeah, because if it is too complicated, especially when we're really busy, it means that our diet can suffer because, and I think eating properly and looking after ourselves in that way, it is really important. I feel a massive difference when I'm eating well.
Yeah,
I
me
think
too. And if I just have a day where I just kind of like didn't eat great, snacked on stuff, but didn't really eat a nice hot meal, it affects me a lot. Like I just need to have one good meal. And sometimes I'll just like cut the meal in half and like eat it a couple times then that day or something, because then I know I've got that. But it's been really helpful for me doing the things that support our well-being, especially when we're going through harder times or more stressful times or our energy is low or health issues or whatever. It's worth doing those things to support yourself. And overall, it's way cheaper than like going out to eat all the time or ordering food.
Yeah.
And so does anybody have anything that's live with us that they want to ask questions about or make comments on? It's a good time to do it. Oh, Miriam says, I never thought about executive function in relationship to meal planning. When I go to the grocery store, all my thoughts go out the window and I can barely get the basic minimum. Yeah, it is just a struggle for me. It doesn't come naturally to me. Like a lot of people in my family are just love cooking, and I've always admired that when someone just loves cooking. And we had had like a visitor for a week. A friend of ours came to visit, and he's like cooking in the kitchen, and he was just like so enjoying it. It was so like meditative the way that he was cooking, and like he would like light a candle, and I was like, oh, this is so nice to watch somebody really enjoying this process. For me, it's like a means to an end. I'm like, I just need to get it done so I can eat it.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God, I really understand that because when I was growing up, one of my caregivers loved cooking and the other one really hated it, and so I had this kind of mixed thing. But I realized that I actually really love to cook, but I need to know what I'm doing. And recently, I said this last time, but Mariam, this might be a tip for you. What I wrote into ChatGPT the other day was, tell me about some really tasty natural whole food recipes that where because of the area that I'm living in right now, tell me the ingredients of really tasty recipes that I can easily find here. And then it just listed all of these recipes of ideas. I'm looking and going, oh, wow, that's a really good. Oh my God, that's a really good idea. And then I said, can you list me all the ingredients and the quantities of what I need for each of those recipes that you just gave me? And it goes, and there's my shopping list.
Wow.
And then when I come home, I was saying, okay, tell me the recipe for that. Tell me the recipe for that. And then it does it. And That has actually really helped me, I have to say.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really helpful. I before ChatGPT, I remember when my kids were little, when I was during the time that I was stay at home with them. So the cooking was on me and the shopping and stuff. And I used to have to do so much research and be like, okay, I want to make this. And I always like to have like new food too. I actually don't like to eat the same thing over and over again. So I really like variety. So I was always like researching recipes and be like, okay, I need 1 cup of this and I need, it's like, it was so much work, but that definitely makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, and it's really good if you turn the memory on as well, it remembers things. So if you say to, oh my gosh, I really loved that, then it remembers that, and it's you can say like, what was that recipe I did that I really liked, and it will give it to you again. Or or it might say, or you might say, hey, I'm cooking this now. From the ingredients that I've got right now, what would go well with this? Because it knows what you've bought in the supermarket, it'll tell you the herbs that you can go to and put in the dish. It's genius.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah,
Wow. Amazing technology, right? Oh,
yeah.
so cool. Um, Willow, why don't you share a little bit about what, people can find when they look you up?
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. The links are always underneath the episode, but the best way to find me is to go to highsensoryintelligence.com. And from there, you're most welcome to book a call with me. I love to just have a chat with you as an HSP. You don't have to have anything prepared. You can just come on the call and talk to me about your dreams, your aspirations. My area of expertise is always to bring HSPs into their alignment with their value and their purpose in the world. I want to support us to come into service in the way that's most authentic and real for us at whatever level that may be. And I have all sorts of resources and support around helping you to do that. And it would be my pleasure just to introduce you to those pieces.
Wonderful. Yeah, I've heard so many great things about people working with you. And I also really love seeing the light that goes on after they've been working with you. And some of them have even come into the community and done events after they've worked with you, like events, meaning in their new field that they've always wanted to get into, but they've got that confidence from working with you. I just think that's so amazing, and the ripple effect that occurs when that happens. I wanted to, I have so many resources on my website. If you go to sensitiveconnection.com, there's just really a ton of resources. And one thing I wanted to mention, anybody that is struggling with health issues, chronic pain, even heart issues, high anxiety, feeling like flawed in the world, like these kinds of feelings. If you feel that, please take my free autism quiz, because I'm actually seeing a lot of people come to me, like clients who are really suffering and they absolutely did not realize they were autistic. So we are seeing a lot of health challenges in autistic people, and especially when they don't know they're autistic, and the sense of pushing themselves a lot in the world. Because high stress, we see if we have a lot of sympathetic nervous system activation, dominance, meaning, the stress centers constantly activated, releasing adrenaline, stress hormones. We're starting to see that is affecting coronary arteries, excuse me, coronary arteries. So we're seeing people 50s, 60s, 70s and above starting to experience heart attacks, heart issues. And we have so much we need to do to educate about this. And it is just such an important piece to understand about yourself. I suspect that the majority of our listeners and in our community are also autistic, but don't know it. So just know that what we were taught about autism in the past was wrong. And that if you have really strong sensitivities, this is something I really encourage you to look into, because we know that by understanding these things about ourselves, that our health improves. And I also wanted to say, we're going to start doing, I'm really looking forward to doing some weekly groups, both in the Autistic Women's group as well as in the main community. So I invite you guys to join for that. It's going to be a lot of fun to have that that weekly connection with each other. And then join me too for the Thursdays with Julie, where we get together before the podcast recording and talk casually, share wins. We got some great wins today. And I love that seeing a lot of the wins today before we started recording centered around advocating for our needs. And I was just, it's really beautiful to see that. And I know, how important that is. Somebody mentioned, for example, Mike shared about bringing his own pillow when he travels. And, that's an important thing. It makes better sleep, and, advocating for the things that you need to be your highest level of wellness. So you can definitely check out all the resources, join the community, check out all of our podcast episodes. We're going to put links in the show notes. And I want to thank everybody for being with us today. It's so fun to connect, and let's have some continued conversations in the community, and invite you to join the Sensitive Empowerment community. Join us for these live events. Please rate and review the podcast, share the episodes with others. We are in the top 1.5% globally because you've done that, meaning we are in 183 countries and counting, maybe more. I haven't checked lately. I mean, that's just amazing that these sensitive people all over the world are feeling supported, and that's what we want to do. So thanks, Willow. Anything else that you wanted to share?
Not just to say thank you, everyone, for joining us and for all of your support. It's wonderful to have you here, and keep reaching out. Keep checking out the communities, and we very much look forward to seeing you next time.
Yeah, I look forward to it. And if I missed anything, I'm going to put the chat in the community itself, and I try to read through it after, because I probably missed stuff, and we can have some continued discussions after I post it in the community. So thank you for being with us live. Thank you, Willow, for being with us. We will see you next week. We look forward to it. Come join us live. It's a lot of fun to be together. Sending out lots of love to everyone. Take good care of yourselves out there, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye.